Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat Podcast, a platform that features professionals across a variety of industries and promotes growth mindset principles with a central pillar of championing the achievements of women. Our conversations explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to growth and empowerment. On this episode of Virtual Water Cooler Chat, we're speaking with Kevin D. Turner, a seasoned business leader and managing partner at TNT Brand Strategist. With a wealth of experience spanning multiple industries, Kevin has successfully pivoted his career 5 times, from management roles in Fortune 50 companies to leadership positions in venture capital, turnarounds, and nonprofit organizations. Kevin is a sought-after speaker and coach and has optimized over 7,000 LinkedIn profiles and trained more than 50,000 individuals on best practices since 2005. His expertise extends to visioneering, team development, and creating disruptive advantages in branding. And go grand, never bland is one of his favorite mantras. Let's get started.
Kevin D. Turner, how are you doing today? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ashley. I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here on your podcast. I have great respect for you, and so this is cool.
I'm so excited. Well, first thing first, let's thank our mutual friend, Melissa Cohen, because if it weren't for her, I would not know Kevin D. Turner. And I also want to thank you for actually giving me a space to check out the LinkedIn headquarters. I think last year, and that was a show, the way that I had to travel on that day. But you know what? I was like, what is my sunk cost here? I have to go there.
I think it's all worth it, right? Just to be able to see you did, in some senses, get a couple extra pictures that you can sneak into some posts here and there. There is an authority built, potentially, by saying you visited, which is kind of crazy, but it does impress people. I'm glad you got to go, and we had an incredible crew that day.
Yeah, I was really glad too, because I think you knew that my Uber never came and I had to go. And then I honestly had to start negotiating and begging the Amtrak people so that they don't charge me yet another ticket, because I already had 2. They have empathy. I think the train got to the Mohanian station around 8:45, and the LinkedIn headquarters meet starts at 9. And I don't run fast. I have to run so fast from the station to the headquarters, and I wasn't sure where I was going. I was like, okay, Google Map, let's not disappoint me. Anyway.
We should have given you the inside scoop, and that is at least 15 minutes before anything happens, everybody's just taking pictures of each other in front of the LinkedIn sign. So you have this built-in buffer. If you have anything going on at LinkedIn, they kind of know this. And so when you're invited in, they know you're not getting past the lobby that quickly.
That was really amazing. I would totally go back again. If you ever had another meetup, definitely let me know. Let's talk about Kevin. Tell me about your story and how you actually got into where you are today. Each of the posts or messages, you would have something like, go grand, never bland. Talk about that, and how should we think about Kevin Turner's personal brand versus personal bland?
I guess it all starts with your parents. I had very, very old-fashioned parents, but they were into marketing. So one was from Ireland, my mom, and the other one was from England, my dad, and they were traditional marketing people. They worked for Look Life, Esquire, Time Magazine back in the 50s, and Hell's Kitchen in New York City. They kind of grew up through that and then went into business in other areas. It was always about getting your words right. And so you've got an Englishman and an Irish lady. You learn to use your words well, and both are very, very creative in very different ways. The English is more strict in how they say things. The Irish are a little more flamboyant in how they say things. They spin a song out of a sentence. And I guess that marriage produced me, and I love words, right? And people remember words. And that's the thing. When you come up with taglines that you use and you use them constantly, people remember them. If you tell somebody they rocked, wow, nobody's ever said that to me since I was 14, but I love it. They remember that. And that's part of that personal brand. It doesn't have to be as goofy as I am, but that's me. Everybody's got to figure out what that is, what those words are that resonate with the target audience that you want to attract. Repel the rest, as John Asperian would say, attract the best, repel the rest. That's what you want to come up with in ways that they can remember. And so I guess that's where things started. Within my career, I actually had 5 pivots. Fortune 50, SONY Corporation, starting in Japan, coming here to the States in the sales and marketing side, left there at a opportunity where they did a venture with Qualcomm and it blew up. Parent company's got a divorce and they let us all go, 600 of us at once. months. And I said, I know marketing. I know branding. I'm going to rebrand myself to make my transition faster and much more effective. And from there, I actually doubled my salary, went into venture capital from sales and marketing management at a national level. That was a big pivot. And it was a pivot based on building the brand out. Enjoyed doing that for a few years. That venture capital group finally decided to pack it up and keep the hundreds of millions that they made in profits. And they helped us all in our transition point. And I went into doing turnarounds for private equity. And I love that. There's a lot of opportunity there. But if you do turnarounds right, you're out of a job, right? And you got to find the next turnaround. So just like consulting, the number one thing you do when you land an account and they're expecting 100% of your time is you spend 70% of your time trying to find two more. It's that constant churn burn, throwing yourself in there, and you want to do it right. So it does end up putting you out if you do these things correctly. It could be every 6 months. I can't do that anymore. I even moved my family once to Nashville to do a turnaround where the company thought it was going to take 3 years, and we did it in 10 months and had to move back or move somewhere. And, those kind of things is transitions you don't want to get into. From there, I went into nonprofit. And so I led American Heart Association from being US based only into 140 countries. So built remote offices, hired the staff around the world, put print facilities in other areas within the world so that we didn't incur tax issues for a nonprofit. It gets kind of tricky in the process, but truly enjoyed that. Was traveling 80% of my month, raising a family, having a relationship with my wife, right? 80% of the month I'm on the road. When I'm home, I'm on the opposite side of the clock because we weren't going into areas like most tourists did. You didn't really end up in Paris a lot. You ended up in Mogadishu, where they needed the science to save lives. That's where you went. So it was world travel, but it was the world's worst travel. We were talking earlier about your travel story, getting to LinkedIn. That was normal for me. I never complain now when I travel, no matter what happens. If the plane catches on fire and we land, I'm okay because we got there, right? So that got to a point where it was a little too much, and talked with my wife and said, let's do another pivot. Let's do something else together. She's an incredible writer and has been throughout her whole career with groups like IBM and Lockheed Martin and more in that technical space. And then also helping people with career guidance and career writing. And I knew LinkedIn really well. The reason I got into LinkedIn very early on, this was in 2005, was because of this international travel. To me, LinkedIn was like a digital platform for pen pals. The old days, you wrote a letter, you sent it off, waited 4 weeks, one came back and you read it, and you wrote again, you sent it off, right? It was really asynchronous, took way too much time, but I loved it as a kid. I had some great relationships with it. To me, that's what LinkedIn was. Every single day, everybody I was meeting around the world, I was encouraging them, jump onto LinkedIn, share what's going on, and we'll be part of that every single day. We'll be part of each other's lives. And I have people incredible that still show up in my feed, still show up in my comments, still show up in my messaging. I'm learning about them every day. And it's kind of interesting because I've gone back and stepped into some of the pictures I've taken over the years with them and just watching them naturally get better, mature, like fine wine. They got better even over the time. And it's really interesting to think that every day I had connectivity with them. And so that's why I just loved LinkedIn from the very beginning.
That's awesome. LinkedIn has evolved quite a bit, but there's still a large amount of people basically just lurking around and not maximizing the use of the platform. I hear different stats in terms of what percentage of people are actually active user on LinkedIn. Do you have any specific stats that you might want to share with us? I've heard 1%. Sometimes people will say that a little bit higher, but do you know what is the active user percentage on LinkedIn right now?
The last one I've seen from LinkedIn itself was 3%.
Oh, okay.
So 3% of the membership, which is now at, I think it's 1.4 billion. When I joined, it was under 2 million. And I thought that was too crowded at the time. Then when they started posting around 2013, you could do a post on LinkedIn and it would have a reach of 250,000 if it was failing. If it wasn't doing so well. Now, if you get 500, you're doing pretty good. It's a much more crowded platform right now. And I do liken LinkedIn to a microcosm of the real world. There are leaders. There are public speakers. And I don't use the word lurker. I use listener or learner because they're there. They are participating in their own way. They're getting smarter. They're listening. They're learning. And believe it or not, over the almost 20 years I've been on LinkedIn, they show up at really interesting times and saying, I've been following you forever. And I want you to help me do this, this, and this. The opportunity was there. And really was because I allowed them to be those listeners, those learners in the process and help them grow. And then they came to me for whatever that was that they need to go forward with. And that is the biggest opportunity opinion, LinkedIn. So I wouldn't ever want to make everybody a active contributor to LinkedIn because not everybody is. Just like the real world, not everybody is doing that. Some people learn and then bring you in when they need you. And I'm a believer on LinkedIn. I share a lot. I give away a lot. I always think of it in the sense that tell them about the science and they'll come to you for the art. And that's really what I do. I understand the science of LinkedIn and how things function and happen. And I will tell people that day and night. Sometimes it blows them up. Sometimes they tell me, don't tell me anymore. It's a little too geeky, whatever it is. But then there comes to that art piece of what do you want to get out of LinkedIn? And I help people do that. And that's, I think, the balance value in there of giving away so much. It does come back to you if you do it right. And you've got to be then known to be the person who can get the art done.
That's great. Thank you so much also for pointing out the difference between lurkers versus listener and learners. There are a lot of influencers out there, and that is one of them that I was hearing different renditions of how people are using LinkedIn. And that was the one I was like, okay, that's kind of catchy. Maybe I'll just use that and see what Kevin actually said. I do like the fact that you basically are using this as a business model of teach not sell, at least initially. People will come to you if you give the information. Sharing is caring, especially in this particular day and age when we have more negative news than positive news. So thank you for contributing. Now, one of the things that you talk about is that LinkedIn being a social platform, it's basically the business model where members are the product. Can you elaborate and help us understand how and when did you come to this realization?
It was very early on, probably around 2007. I had studied what got LinkedIn started, and Reid Hoffman, I remember where I read this. He was really, really big into playing a game at bars, the Kevin Bacon game, the 6 degrees of separation.
Yes.
In 6 handshakes, you can beat anybody in the world. The less handshakes you would have in that game to get to somebody, you would win if you had the less amount. So that was the challenge. How do you meet Marilyn Monroe in that connection game, starting with John Wayne? They never appeared together at any place, but you'd have to tie them all together to make that string in the shortest amount of time. Well, that's really what LinkedIn is based on, is that 6 degrees of separation. Believe it or not, they bought the patent for 6 degrees of separation for a social media site. They got it from Zuckerberg on a end of the night, midnight kind of bid where they outbid him. And he was not happy because had he done that, LinkedIn wouldn't exist. LinkedIn figured out really fast this interconnectivity of who you know knows who and all the way down the line. There was value in it, but only if you broke the chain. So if you think about it on LinkedIn, you can't see past, for the most part, your second degree, maybe your third degree out of 6. You've never seen a 6th degree connection, and you never will unless you pay for it. That's how LinkedIn monetizes the whole platform. That's what recruiters for. Pay $1,000 a month. We'll give you the whole platform, access to everything. We'll give you a bunch of tools. Sales Navigator, the same thing. A little more restrained than recruiter in its access, but that's what it was about, is selling access to the database. That's what they are in. That's their business, database access. And the data is us as product. So if you think about it in that sense, the better product that you can be for LinkedIn, the more LinkedIn will promote you. And you got to think of it also in the sense of who is that main customer of LinkedIn? That's the recruiters and the sales navigators, right? That's 65% of their $18 billion annual revenue. So what's that? Around 12 billion, right? Actually, if you owned a store and 65% of your customers came in and they bought certain things, they wanted certain things, you would set up your store. How? How would you set that store up? Well, I know you probably set it up to service them, right? Get them in, get them out, get their money. That's what LinkedIn has done. For products that didn't fit that customer, they put them on the back shelf. Maybe somebody will want them, but I'm not going to take up the prime real estate of my store, my end caps, my eye level. I'm going to put the stuff that doesn't quite fit somewhere else. And if somebody really wants it, they can find it. That's the other small percentage of the customers. So I want to serve that 65%, get them in, get them out, get their money. And then I can worry about how do I monetize the other pieces. They'll come and they'll find it. They're used to that. That's the business model angle that LinkedIn has set up. So if you become the perfect product for those two customers, and think about recruiter and think about sales navigator, recruiter on LinkedIn is spending $1,000 a month. They're being paid by companies to go out and find somebody that the company cannot find. Somebody who's not showing up and applying, somebody they don't know about. And companies look at that and they pay those recruiters. This is how they can afford to pay LinkedIn. They pay those recruiters anywhere between 5 to 50% of your first year salary as their equivalency landing bonus. So if I land you, if you're going to make 200,000 and I get you in that job, I make 50,000. That's incentive. I can afford
An
that.
incentive.
And I can afford to pay LinkedIn $1,000 a month. If I don't land anybody, guess how much I make? Zero. LinkedIn knows that companies are paying this big dollar amount to these recruiters. So LinkedIn says, you know what? I want to know exactly what that recruiter wants. And the company's telling that recruiter, because I'm paying you so much money, here's what I want. Number one thing, they want employed. They want you to steal them away from the competition. I'm spending money as a company. I want to hurt the competition too. Not just spend money. I want to hurt the competition too. LinkedIn knows that. So LinkedIn promotes employed over unemployed. Seems unfair in the microcosm of the real world. It seems unfair. In business, it's smart business.
Well, it is capitalism.
Yeah, sometimes LinkedIn doesn't really tell you the whole story. They try to pretend like we're this social good site. They're an $18 billion business and they're selling us to others. And always have to keep that in perspective. And when we do, we can maximize ourselves as product. And you think about it, if you were selling data, let's say it's an email list, there's certain things that make that list more valuable. Timeliness, an email list that's 10 years old isn't worth as much as an email list that's 2 weeks old. Accuracy, inaccurate, older email list doesn't have as much value as an accurate new email list. Timeliness and accuracy. Completeness. If one of them doesn't have all the emails and some of the phone numbers aren't in it, but the other one has completeness, that one has more value. When you go into LinkedIn and you're filling in LinkedIn, you want to do it in the sense that you're going to complete the profile. And people have a tendency not to do that. They will keep the months off the years of their employment at companies because maybe I had a gap in there. Maybe it was 6 months. Maybe it was a whole year and I can cover it up by having 1 year to the next year. It looks like I was there the whole time. They're covering up the gap. Well, LinkedIn sees that and says, not a perfect product. I'm going to push you down. And you think about search rankings. They're just like the old days when we went to Google to find something. When you did a Google search, how often did you get past page 2 or 3?
Okay.
No, you can keep hitting more. Google will go to infinity and beyond with you to the point where it doesn't even match what you originally asked for. LinkedIn's going to do the same thing. If we're not in that first couple of pages of search results, we're not found. So if we're not the perfect product, we're not going to be in those first couple of pages. And that's what people don't realize. They do things like, I'm going to take my graduation dates off my education. So they don't know how old I am. Well, if we've ever had a Gmail or been on Google, they already know how old we are. If you've been to have internet access, they know. They probably know better than we know sometimes. I forget how old I am. They definitely know. So you're not fooling anybody, but LinkedIn looks at that and says, well, that's not a complete product. So I'm not going to serve that up. And I also know, as LinkedIn does, that education is the number one thing people lie about in their career. So if you won't give me the dates, I can't verify it, nor can that recruiter verify that education. So I've got to pretend it doesn't even exist. So people who get bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctorates, whatever it is, PhDs, JDs, all that stuff, if they don't put their dates in there, basically they're on page 150. They'll still maybe show up in the mix, but they're going to show up so far down the mix, nobody's going to find them. Because again, they're not the perfect product because they're trying to hide the data. So when we start thinking about LinkedIn in that sense, that's where we start growing within LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is, to me, really interesting in the sense that it's got 8 major product groups within LinkedIn. And believe it or not, they all compete. That's why sometimes you see a feature show up on mobile, it's not on desktop. Why wouldn't they connect each other and talk to each other and make it all happen in one? They could. They won't because they're competing with each other's product group for the approval of the parent. I'm better at this than Joey is.
Trying to be the favorite.
Exactly. They're all doing that. So that goes all the way down to the term that scares most people, algorithm. I always call the people who get too fascinated by the theories of the algorithm, I call them alcoholics, because that's what they are. They don't control it. It is now a disease. And what you actually find if you study algorithms is they change, they evolve constantly. So you never know exactly where they are. If you're studying the past to predict the future of an algorithm, you might have it completely wrong. You can prove it. In fact, I studied 10 million posts, but that was a study of the past. Sometimes knowing the past helps us have a better future, but it doesn't guarantee it. So it can't be taken as fact or gospel. It has to be taken as suggestions. If they work, try them out. Don't get into consuming those alcohols. Don't do it because it's going to lead you down a bad path. Know what your audience wants and then create the content around that. Now, LinkedIn realized that these competing product groups were putting out competing algorithms. There isn't actually one algorithm on LinkedIn. So anybody who tells you the algorithm doesn't really know what they're talking about. If you go into the engineering blog, I found a year ago over 19 algorithms for just reach alone of a post, and they came from different groups. If you think about one of the algorithms that's out there is I can go to somebody's profile, I can follow them, and I can ring their bell. And I can double ring their bell and I'll get everything in my feed. When that came out, it worked. Guess what other product group looked at that and said, wait a minute, you're giving the member full control of their feed and I want to sell advertising and boosted posts. and sponsored content, because that's how I make my money, I'm going to write an algorithm that defeats the Bell algorithm. LinkedIn is not saying don't play bad with your brothers and sisters. They're just saying get after it, show me your best. And LinkedIn finally, because I used to have meetings upon meetings with LinkedIn. I've done 19 beta tests with them over the years. They finally got to a point where they said, we can't have all this stuff going on like that. That's where this whole new system has come in, which still uses all the inputs from those old algorithms. People tell you it doesn't. It does. It considers them, but it puts them in balance of the total picture of where LinkedIn needs to go. The first one is Llama 3, which is an open source, actually came from Meta. They brought Llama 3 in and focused it on understanding who we are. Who's Ashley? What is she really an expert in? And who should see Ashley's stuff? So that's what that Llama 3 is doing. It then passes that information over to another AI. That's Brew 360. Brew 360 saying, okay, we know who Ashley is. We know what her expertise is. We know who should be seeing her. Now we're going to decide with Brew 360, how long should that post go out? Who should that post go to percentage-wise? Because they never just give you full reign. They don't throw it out there like the old days when you got 250,000 views if you failed. They say, we're going to test it. We're going to send it out to 200 of your most active network and see what they do. And if they don't respond, we're going to lower it down. That was how the old days ran on that feed algorithm. They're looking at that going, now it's an input. But that's what Brew 360 is figuring out. Who should then be exposed to it at what level? And then when do we change that? When do we say this is no longer good or this needs to go to the next level? When do we make this? So they're predicting the actual reach capability of our posts. They took what Llama 3 gave them, and now they're predicting your post actuality, where it might go. And then the third AI system that's brought in now is natural language search, which then takes the first two's content and predictions. So one is content facts, the other one's predictions. It takes that and puts it into semantics that somebody might ask a question, kind of like the old, I don't remember if you remember the old search engine Ask Jeeves. And it was the first time
I actually know about that.
Yeah, it was the first time you could say, I want a brand marketer who likes cats and also canoes. And it would go out and answer that and find you that person. LinkedIn's kind of doing the same thing. That natural language means we now need to think about how would somebody search for me in a natural sense so that they find me and that I stand out from the rest. So that's really critical in that sense. How do you answer that? And that's kind of new. That overarching system not only puts control back with LinkedIn corporate, right? Not all these different product groups, but it also controls a couple other things that were happening that LinkedIn knew were a disease within the platform. And that was it identifies pods. Those are people who pay for popularity, which then impacts reach. So you pay into the system and they push out comments to your post as soon as it goes live. You'll put a post out there and it'll have 350 reactions within 10 seconds and 500 comments within a couple of seconds. And so LinkedIn in the old days would push that out farther thinking, this is good stuff. It's going wild. It was artificial. And so LinkedIn said, we got to stop that. And it was for two reasons. One, because it was frustrating the real creators for doing it the right way. The second one is it was competing with LinkedIn's revenue. If I got a bunch of pod people filling up the feed, which is finite, it's a funnel. You can only throw so much in a funnel to make you go out the other end.
How about money?
Yeah, if I got these pods, just filling that funnel, then I can't sell advertising, boosted posts, sponsored posts, all the other things that I make money on every day. So they had two reasons to lock down on that one. The other thing that they noticed was a problem was just fake profiles, fake companies, doing all sorts of nefarious stuff on LinkedIn. They spend a lot of time helping people get their accounts back because somebody sent them a DM from a fake account that said, click on this and you'll get a free, whatever it is, a free guide to do this, this, and this. They built their trust up. They gave them a link. They clicked the link. Now the person on the other side owns their account, locks them out, and LinkedIn has to help them get back in. They're spending a huge amount of time. They've had to staff up in that side just to be able to get people back in their accounts. That's why I always share that get out of jail free card. So if you can't get into LinkedIn, at least you can use that address to get back in and have a conversation so they can understand. So LinkedIn realized that they have to solve the fakes because the fakes are not there to do good things. They're either supplementing their own posts with activity, like a manual pod in its sense, or they're doing something nefarious trying to gain access. And believe it or not, a lot of people sign into their LinkedIn account using their business email. If you're at your work and you're using your IBM email, not only have you exposed your account, but you've exposed IBM. You've brought them inside. So when something like that happens, the code can be written within a link that then gives them access into the IBM databases. That's a problem. LinkedIn wants IBM on their site. They want these big companies on the site because that's what tracks everything. It's part of that ecosystem. LinkedIn knows it has to take care of it. So that's really the core reason behind these three AIs now that are sitting on top of all these engineered algorithms to put that in control, to keep LinkedIn's revenue flowing and to get rid of some of these cancers that are growing within. That's the concept. And again, that's how I like to look at LinkedIn, not the way most people do. I like to figure out what is the business reason behind it. I usually ask my friends on the inside of LinkedIn, I call them my innies. I ask them questions, and when they stop answering, I know I got the answer. So they're like, I can't talk to you anymore. Okay, I now know. They're like, no, you don't. It goes like that a lot. I don't know why some of them take calls from me. Some of them take emails from me. But back to that whole concept of we are the product. LinkedIn is a business. Yes, we get social good out of it. But if we don't respect the business side of it, we're going to get pushed down. We're going to become invisible. That's just really important to know in this process.
That's really, really good information. So this is season 4 of Virtual Water Cooler Chat. And I started out practicing my public speaking because I couldn't find a Toastmaster chapter during COVID that is really consistently open or available. And so I was like, you know what? When you have a business, you have to promote it. Otherwise, it just won't exist. So I was like, I need to practice my conversational skills and also be able to just learn from people. That has been amazing. We released 94 at the end of season 3. The 95th is actually season 4. The first one was Seth Godin. And it has been so amazing because I told Seth that in the beginning, I really sucked.
We all do.
I didn't do all of the episode because I signed some of the younger people on my team, and especially the Gen Z was like, well, let's do the prep because I'm from the legal space. I was a case manager in an IP firm. And this is part of mentoring. And I was like, can you come up with the questions? Then we just go on Zoom, and then I would be the guest, and then we'll just go through the whole process. And in the beginning, they were like, how do you know so much about the guests? I said, I'm just making up answers as I go along because it's a prep. I just want you to be comfortable to be in a conversation. And the thing is, it's been so amazing watching the growth of all this. I call them kids. They're not really kids. They're young adults. It's a term of endearment. What can I say? And seeing how they have progressed and the questions that they ask and the fact that they are benefiting from people that are industry leaders. And they was like, oh, wow, I spoke with a Harvard attorney. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. So that was really amazing. And it really helped with the personal fulfillment of having this podcast. Because it started out with practicing my conversational skills. And then now I'm pretty comfortable when I'm talking to people. I think part of it is that English is my second language. Can relate. You wouldn't know? Well, I do have
I know you have roots in Hong Kong, which
yes.
Love Hong Kong, by the way. Or I used to. I haven't been there in 20 years. I don't know what it's like now. It's probably much different than when I was there.
The last time I was there is 2019. I think it was like right after my dad passed, and I took my mom and I to travel a lot of places. I'm hoping that I can actually go to Asia. Actually, Australia and New Zealand are what I really want to do. But if I am doing that, I will do 2 countries, and then it's probably going to be 3 weeks to a month because that whole flight is going to be so long. Now, I think that because I've kind of gone through the journey and I understand when I'm just mostly learning from LinkedIn and not necessarily posting, partly because if I have a job that is not my own business, sometimes your posting may affect your employer and sometimes your employers may not, especially if in government, right? So there is a whole group of people that cannot really be active on LinkedIn because of their employment situation. That
Those are learners and listeners.
Yes, not lurkers. Well, that's such a negative connotation, Ashley. Don't ever say that.
It used to drive me crazy, so I try to get it out there. These are learners and listeners.
So one of the things that I want to share with you then before we close is that you never know when you make a post how and who and in what part of the world does it actually show up and affect someone else? So I want to give you a couple of quick story. One is that I was at a conference in Colorado. I think it was like November. I was just there because I was deciding last minute to go. And at breakfast, I have my Colorado burrito, I have my coffee, and then I have my bag, and then the conference tote and all these things. And I was speaking with one younger attorney, and she was grabbing some coffee, and then we just started talking. Then we sat down and talked, and she looked at my lanyard and said, "Oh, you're Ashley Chung from Virtual Patent Gateway and from Northern Virginia." I'm like, "Yeah, I am." So I'm just focusing on not dropping anything. And let's find a place and put our stuff and blah, blah, blah. So we sat down and she said, "Tell me what you do." So I did. And after that, she goes, "I've been following this person in Northern Virginia and doing the similar business that you do." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I said, "Did you follow her on LinkedIn?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Would you mind opening up and show me who that person that you're following?" Because my suspicion is that you might be following me. So she opened and said, "Oh, that's me." So that was really amazing. I'm an ambivert. So it's super challenging for me. I would not generally be the loudest person or the most talkative person. I like to observe. In the patent field, there's a lot of introverts because they're so good in it's all in here. The consistency is not really the problem. I think it's like how you have to break the challenges of your self-perception and your self-consciousness. And I think one of the things that I have actually been able to do with a lot of thought leaders, help yourself, Melissa Cohen and Julie Michelle Morris, and I learned from the DIY influence, and then a lot of the brand strategists, my friend Sasha. And through all of that, I know that has been really influential. The fact that people are seeing me, the last person that they would think would be showing up on LinkedIn, putting in consistent posts, reaching out to people, and then asking for some amazing speakers like yourself to share. And I think that that is the other part of fulfillment besides mentoring the young future lawyers or future engineers. I just found that this has been one of the most amazing platforms, and I try to be consistent, and I have meetings with my team to go through like the posts, and we from time to time will use AI to help us write the posts, but we never use it as a final product. Yeah, because then it's not authentic. It's kind of fake. Like AI is good for helping you to generate something to consider, never to be a final product. So that part,
look at it as a spark.
exactly. So thank you so much. We've talked about AI, we've talked about algorithm, we've talked about searchability, we talked about followers and so many things. I really do appreciate you for taking the time. And one last question. Tell me a little bit about your virtual background.
This is actually not virtual.
Okay.
It is a oil painting by my brother, Colin Turner, out of San Antonio. And it is the Mission San Juan. Catholics, when they were taking over that part of, at that time was Mexico, they built all these missions to help the natives be better. And the architecture is just incredible. And he's painted most of the missions. The most famous mission, of course, is the Alamo. It was a Catholic kind of church outpost before it became a military outpost. I love it. It just has a feel that feels good to me. And I've used this as my background for years. And I used to switch it out with other pieces of art. And people were like, "Oh, no, not that art, not that background. I want the one."
So what is the size of this painting?
This is actually a reproduction of the painting because I used to pull it in when I had different places. I would take it from above the mantle, fireplace in the living room, and I would put it behind my desk for a video process. And then I'd put it back. Going back and forth, I just said, you know what? I'm going to get a backdrop printed. And believe it or not, on Amazon, I found a company that will print backdrops like this for $25.
Wow.
And now I can roll this up and take it with me. So if I'm traveling and somebody wants that background, and believe it or not, it's happened, I can roll this up and take it with me. This one in size is probably...
It's pretty large.
6 by 5, somewhere in there. There's more up above me and there's more below me and more on either side.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you so much for all the contribution that you have made to the LinkedIn community. I am so happy this is going to be the highlight of my week. And you are the first virtual podcast guest for the Urban Raccoons Creative Hub. That's so awesome. Thank you.
Ashley, you rock, and I appreciate you having me on, and know that the respect is very mutual.
Thank you.
I wish you an incredible 2026.
You too, because I'm going to be watching you.